Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Hey. Hey guys, Jerred Moon here, and welcome to the Betterhumanology podcast, a podcast aimed at one thing, and that is making you a better human. And we do that in a number of ways. That is either an experiment that we do and we test ourselves, test something out to see if it could actually make us better. Sometimes we go over research and cover new topics that could possibly make you better. And then we also, on occasion, bring on guests to interview people who we feel could really make you a better human, and they've proven that through their lives. And today we have such a man. His name is AJ Roberts. If you've never heard of AJ Roberts, he is a podcaster, speaker, best-selling author, and 2 times world record holder. Yes, in powerlifting, he was actually deemed the strongest man in the world and has squatted 1,205 pounds. This guy is crazy. But on top of that, now he is an extremely sought-after business consultant in the fitness niche, and you may know him as the host of the Barbell Business podcast and for some of his work at ajroberts.com. The dude is awesome. He has a lot of systems, processes, habits, rituals, all this stuff that I want to cover in today's podcast because, yes, he went on a 10-year journey to become the world's strongest man, but he's done so much more in his life and accomplished so many things in business, life, and with barbells. I wanted to really dissect AJ Roberts, and that's what we did today. We cover everything in this podcast, A to Z, AJ Roberts, if you will, and I got a lot out of it. I'm hoping that you do too. So let's talk to AJ. Hey AJ, it's great to have you on the Betterhumanology podcast. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and not just because you can squat a small car, but because you know what it takes to really be a better human. You are not the type of person who is just going to get one side of life figured out. You want to figure it all out. You want to be well balanced and excel in it all. You're an all or nothing type of guy from what I can understand. And so I'm really excited to have you on the Betterhumanology podcast to talk about being a better human. So I want to get started with, first off, you just kind of telling me about your background and what you're doing now where people can kind of get a feel for that.
Oh yeah, I guess where to start. It's been quite the journey over the last 20 or so years of my adult life. But I grew up in England, and so if you could, as you're listening to the show, you probably hear some odd accents in there. I've lived in about 6 different states in the U.S., but I originally came over to play basketball in high school. I thought I was going to be an NBA player, and ended up in a small town over here in Oregon, and turned out my senior year, I came over as a junior. And my senior year, I was banned by the Oregon Sports Association from playing sports due to ineligibility of recruitment. So unbeknownst to myself, I had no idea I had been recruited, but I guess there was a process that the school had gone through to find me. I was trying to do everything above board. And we tried to fight it, didn't happen. So I ended up having to take on, some other sport to entertain myself. Being an athlete, I had to do something. And that led me into the sport of powerlifting. I actually was on a bowling team as well, and we made it to state, which is a whole nother story. I won't go too far with that. But yeah, that's where I started powerlifting. And then that led me on the journey. I ended up being a professional powerlifter and breaking some world records. And during that time, in order to end up in Columbus, Ohio, which is where Westside Barbell is, and that's the gym that I ended up breaking my world records under. There's known as the strongest gym in the world. In order to get there, I took a job in Kentucky at a health club. As running the personal training department in a health club, quickly became in charge of the entire health club, and the owners of that were consultants, business consultants in the fitness industry, and I ended up working a lot with them outside of the health club, and in the end ended up leaving the health club to move to Columbus and working with them to build their consulting business. And that ended up in us together as a group building about 12 different businesses within inside the fitness industry. Some being business to business and some being a business to consumer. So, and we had products and e-commerce and stuff like that. So that's where I really got into the business side of stuff, and I really found my passion was in marketing, getting the message out there to the world of what you offer. And what I found was if I had this life mission to help people to transform their lives, and of course the more people I could get that message in front of, the more lives I could transform. So that grew the desire for marketing, which then evolved into learning all areas of business. And that group decided to go into franchising, and I decided that I wanted to go off and be an entrepreneur and do some other things, which led me into the world of online marketing, and ended up bringing me out here to San Diego to run a big company out here. Worked with them for about a year running their company, and then again decided to do some other things, and was doing some consulting of my own. And then ended up going back with that company. They had merged into a larger company. They absorbed my publishing and consulting firm that I was running, and we had a software side of the company. I ran that again for about a year, and ended up deciding that I wanted to get back into fitness. I wanted to merge my love for health and longevity with my love for business, and so I decided to move back into the fitness arena. Started working with gym owners and helping them build their offline businesses, as well as helping gym owners and successful personal trainers build an online presence. And met some amazing people, and met the guys from Barbell Shrugged, who I know you're familiar with. And after, getting to know them and hanging out with them, we decided that we would partner up on Barbell Business, which is, a platform designed to help anyone looking to start a business within the fitness industry. So gym owners and, inspiring entrepreneurs. And so we've been doing that now for, close to a year. It continues to grow and continue to add new awesome stuff. And so I do that and work with a few companies on the side to help them grow their business too. So it's, like I said, it's been a journey. But in a nutshell, that's kind of, the condensed version.
Yeah, man, that's a huge journey. And I don't think, I know I've seen some pictures, but did you mention bodybuilding in there too?
Oh yeah, so just after 2012, I retired from powerlifting. I tell the story. I was fat, sick, nearly dead. I weighed 320 pounds. I competed at 308, so I was a big fella. When I came over to the States, I was only a $170. So I had gained over 100 pounds, 150 pounds, 60 pounds or whatever. Wow. During my powerlifting career, to obviously be one of the strongest people in the world. And I know we'll get into some of the traits and habits and things I did to do that. But after I retired, I said, hey, look, I got to get myself in shape if I want to live. I was really, at the end of the day, mentally tapped out. And a lot of it had to do with the weight and knowing how unhealthy I was, and having I went to college, I got my degree in sports science and things like that. So I understood the human body, understood what I was doing to myself, what was healthy, what was not healthy. I understood the risks I was taking. But it was time to get to clean up and get back to being healthy and cut out a lot of the foods that I was eating, to let my body kind of drop weight. So I did CrossFit for about 8 months and competed in the Open and got hurt during the Open. And that was mainly my fault because I wasn't in shape yet, and I was pushing myself, multiple sessions a day, trying to be a professional CrossFit athlete, versus using, training CrossFit for health. I was pushing the boundaries on a daily basis, and the Open just tore me apart. I ended up getting hurt there. So I kind of thought to myself, well, what can I do to, actually keep losing the weight without, without putting myself at risk of injury or doing anything I was going to hurt myself again. And that's why I decided to do a bodybuilding show, to lean out as much as I could. And I stepped on stage in March 2014, when, I was 219. So I lost over 100 pounds, when I stepped on stage. And of course I've gained a little bit back since then. But that's kind of the athlete in me, still fighting there. But a lot of it was to force myself to lose that weight, and and just get down to something healthy and maintainable, so I obviously could live a longer and more fulfilling life.
And that's just, I mean, I'm blown away by pretty much everything you just said, because, I mean, to put that in perspective, so we talked about how, okay, you came here to play basketball, you were recruited at a high level, you did some bowling, I'm sure that team was pretty good, and then you did powerlifting, became the world's strongest man, and then you ran a bunch of online businesses that did really well, and even in bodybuilding, you lost 100 pounds, which is hard enough for most people to do, but you did it while competing in the sport of bodybuilding. So just really amazing. And so what I want to focus on, you mentioned it when you answered one of the questions, the kind of the habits, rituals, routines that you do to stay so focused. It seemed like when you get a goal, there is nothing else. I mean, you're gonna get it done. But before I go there, I want to know how long, specifically in powerlifting, from say around the time you were like, you know what, I want to be the world's strongest man, to you actually doing it. How long was that time frame?
So I got into powerlifting my senior year in high school, and then I actually only competed in the deadlift. And for the first year, I went to the World Championships, and won the teenage division deadlift, and there was only 3 people in my class. So I mean, it wasn't like it was deep competition. But in my freshman year of college, I started seeking out other people to train with, and that was something that I learned early on. Was you got to surround yourself with the right people if you want to be successful. No matter what it is, you got to put yourself in the right environment. And so I started seeking out training partners, and I found a guy who lived about an hour and a half away named Brent Mikesell. He was a world record holder in the squat, and he had squatted 1,141 pounds, was his world record. And I just reached out and said, hey, can I train with you? And luckily enough, there was a coach from WSU, and University of Idaho was where I went to college, and WSU, they're about 15 minutes away from each other. And one of the strength and conditioning coaches at WSU would drive up and train with Brent twice a week. So I just said, hey, can I come with you? And he said, sure. So the first day I walked into the gym, Brent asked me what my goals were in powerlifting. And I just said, I want to be a world record holder like you someday. And he said, cool. Then and this is what you need to do. So long story short, that was the beginning of it. And 10 years later, is when I started at 16. At 26 is when I broke the world record. So it was about a 10-year journey to get there. But I knew within probably the first year that's what I wanted to do. And I'm one of those people that I don't do anything really half-assed. If I'm going to do something, it's because I'm going to go all in. And so I pick my battles wisely and then commit to whatever it is that I set my sights on. So there's a couple of lessons in that. Surround yourself with the right people, and then commit to something and go all in.
So yeah, and you said so a full decade just for that one goal, and you've accomplished a lot of other things. So that's some extraordinary resolve. What do you do? Is it being around people, or is it specific habits? What do you do to stay motivated for such a long time when you're after a specific goal?
That's a great question. I don't really know. When it comes to motivation, I think a lot of that is just, internally driven for me. I'm not really driven by the external factors. I don't really see, and having obviously broken a world record, a lot of people put the glory in the destination, right? Once I get here, this will happen. Once I make this much money, this will happen. Once I meet the right person, my love life will change. And so people always, seem to glorify the destination, but the real pleasure is in the journey, and the motivation comes from, seeing yourself get closer to that goal, the progress, and seeing how far you've come. And a lot of times, being such a vision-focused person, setting huge goals and chasing them, taking dreams and basically, doing things that people say, that's impossible, I think that for me, it's the fact that, constantly looking back and being like, where was I and where am I now? And then seeing how far I've come, and then that motivates me to keep going, right? and I definitely have the ability to delay gratification, and I don't need that success that so many people want, the get rich quick or the lose weight fast. Like, I definitely see it as, getting to that goal is more important than how fast I get to it. And I truly believe that if you want to achieve anything, all you have to do is commit and go after it. And that's the difference. The biggest thing that'll happen is you're going to have to sacrifice a lot along the way. And for a lot of people, the sacrifice is where they fall short because they're just not willing to do what it takes. And there's nothing wrong in that decision. People who have family and children and things like that, you've got to decide what's more important. But if you do decide to follow your dreams and go all out, I've yet to meet anyone who wasn't able to achieve what it was they set out to do if they're willing to do whatever it takes. And so the motivation just comes from that, seeing that progress, getting closer to the goal, and knowing that, I'm going to reach the end at some point. And that keeps me along the path. And of course, like, it sounds so simple, but so many times you'll get beaten off that path, and you'll take a wrong turn, and you'll do the things, and it's in those moments that define you. You can decide to throw it all in, but or you can look at everything you've accomplished to that point and say, okay, I've got to figure this out. I'm not going to let all of this time go to waste, and we're going to turn things around. And it's in those moments that define you, and you've just got to embrace failure, because it happens no matter what you try to do. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fall short. But it's about learning from that, and then moving past it, not letting the failure kind of stop you, but more so than anything, motivate you to keep going.
And I really appreciate that answer, because you're saying just commit, and of course the hardships will come, especially in a long journey. But I had a conversation with Ben Smith a while back, fittest man this year, and fittest man in the world this year at the CrossFit Games, and I asked him a similar question, and he was almost like confused. He's like, no, if you want something, you just go get it. Like, you just commit and you do it. And so that obviously is something from the world class like yourself, Ben Smith, that you guys just have this this tenacity to get after it and stay on the path for a long time. But do you feel like that extraordinary resolve is anything? You said it's internal, but do you think there's anything from maybe your childhood or upbringing, or anything that kind of has made you that type of person, or you think that it's kind of just it's born, genetic almost?
It's hard to say. I kind of want to believe that it's a process of your environment, and not so much genetics. And the reason I say that is because I see so many people, breaking those limiting beliefs all the time. People who don't come from the same backgrounds, people who, aren't set up for success. Obviously, if you're born into a family of wealth, it's a little bit easier. Life becomes a little bit easier, based on the research, in terms of, your success. Like, if you're born into a family of doctors, there's a good chance you're going to be a doctor, right? But there's also people who come from nothing who end up being a doctor, or end up building successful businesses. And if you look at a majority of the world's wealthiest people, they're people who dropped out of college or high school, and like they have no formal education. So I think it's difficult to say, whether it's genetics or whether it's environment. I think it's slightly maybe a product of both. And I also believe, though, that I grew up, and like, neither of my parents were entrepreneurs when I was growing up. Even my parents were successful athletes. But I would say things, and my parents were never discouraging, right? So they always encouraged me to try. So that I didn't live in a world of, oh, you can't do this and don't do that, you'll get hurt. Like, I lived in this world where my parents let me explore and do that. And I think that kind of gave me a foundation. That then when I got into sports, and this is something that's interesting. Like, I was obviously growing up in England, soccer, football is the biggest sport there is, and I was never that good at it. So I just chose not to do that. I did something else. I found what I was good at, and I stuck to that. And because of that, I grew up being successful in what I chose to do. And so I picked my battles wisely. And because of that, like I was on the winning team. And now I was obsessed. I have a very obsessive nature. And when I get into something, I completely obsess over it. And so with basketball, like I would play every single day. I'd always have a ball with me. I'd always be practicing. And so I was obviously, I was probably doing more than most people. And that put me in situations where I was on the winning teams. But because of that, that gave me the confidence, right? And, confidence comes from repetition of skill. And I think that practice increases the confidence. And so when you gain confidence, that's what really pushes you and motivates you to continue going. And I truly believe it's just like a mindset more than anything. If I rewind the situation and I look at as a kid, if my parents had told me to get down from that tree and not to do this, not to do that, my parents had kept me out of physical sports, and because I played rugby, I was in Sea Scouts, I rode BMX, and had some horrific accidents. My parents never told me I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. If they had, that would have probably not really built the confidence. And then if I'd played on a team that was a losing team, and I had this negative experience with sport, I would have probably not had the confidence or the desire to keep going. And so I think that stuff goes on. And then beyond the childhood, when I got into college, obviously I was already doing well in powerlifting. And by my senior year, I'd already won a world championship. And I took a sports psychology class, and the professor was actually one of the leading researchers in the world on this. He was the president of sports psychology in the United States, and they asked to basically study me. And when we started going through the sports psychology thing, goal setting, self-talk, affirmations, visualization, arousal control, all these different things that they had put names on, what we found was that I did these very naturally. These are all things that I had kind of, figured out how to do in order to be successful. And what they did was they gave me frameworks around these things I had no idea I was doing. I was subconsciously doing them, and those frameworks allowed me to actually then train the mind. And so one of the things, moving forward, like I realized that you physically train the body, but you have to mentally train the mind, and one without the other, it is absolutely useless. It's the same as like thinking you're gonna lose weight, but you're not gonna fix your diet. You need the nutrition for the body, you need the training for the body, and then you need the training for the mind. And I think that's really, when I look back, it's difficult to say, was it genetics or is it the series of fortunate events, so to speak. And the more people I talk to, and there's a book, what is that book called? I'll remember it in a minute. The Talent Code.
Okay.
The book, The Talent Code. I recommend that quite a lot. But it kind of breaks down a lot of people who we think who are just like, born geniuses, and just kind of shows you that like most of the time it's got nothing to do with that. Most of the time it's just repetition of skill. A guy like, Bill Gates, had access to computers before the majority of the world. He had a friend whose dad owned something, and they had computers, and they let the kids play. And him and his friend decided to learn computer programming before there was even a personal computer. So, you look at Bill Gates and his success, and you're like, well, is he just a genius, or was it the fact that he got the access and the ability to practice more than anyone else? You look at guys like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. And there's, the stories of them practicing, getting up at 3 a.m. and going shooting. Kobe Bryant said to shot like 1,000 shots a day. And you look at that and you're like, well, there's a reason he's one of the, the greatest players. The same with Michael Jordan, kid got cut in high school, but then came back to be one of the greatest players. And so the book, The Talent Code, really does a great job of decoding what most people think is just luck. And showing kind of how it's just this repetition of skill. So, I definitely think there's a genetic side to it. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, certain people are built for certain different things. Some people are genetically built to be long distance runners, and some people are built to be powerhouses. Those are the things with the genetic. But between the ears, I truly believe that that's like reprogrammable. The biggest barrier is people just have these false beliefs that they're conditioned and reinforced over the years. And if you can break that and you can let go of those beliefs, I think I truly believe, and I've seen people change their life dramatically. So I think it's a combination, but at the same time, I think the mind there's a lot more power than people give it credit for on a day-to-day basis.
And so we're talking so far. You've mentioned confidence, you've mentioned commitment, and surrounding yourself with the right people, and then of course you're talking about training the brain, which brings up interesting, kind of a two-part question. But I'll go ahead and ask the first one: is education-wise, do you read a lot?
Oh yes. So right now, probably on my desk next to me, there's probably 20 books that are to be read, and then I've got like 4 bookshelves top to bottom. So yeah, I definitely read a lot.
Okay, so big reader, and that's that's really awesome. I can't find the time to read as much as I like, but then I found out that audiobooks exist, which I know sounds silly, but I've always been a big, I want to hold it, I want to read it, and I've kind of forced myself to listen to audiobooks over the last year, and I've been able to knock out so many books. Is there any good book that you could recommend? You said was it The Talent Code was one that you recommend? Is there any other book that you could recommend just for anything, becoming a better human being? And I'm putting you on the spot, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, there's a book called I think it's called The Genius in You, or The Genius in All of Us, and that's another great book. In terms of, I think what most people don't understand is their own genetic, they don't understand themselves, and so anything that shows you that your internal beliefs are false is going to be powerful. And so those 2 books are very good at that. And then I always encourage people to dig into their mindset and to understand themselves. And so we talk a lot about unique genius and discovering that. So like the book, Strength Finder, I think it's Strength Finder 2.0 now, something like that. That's a great book as well, to start to understand how you operate and how you think, and going down into that. And so those are some books probably to get some people started in kind of understanding what is possible, and then kind of understanding where they're at right now in their mindset and their actions, and how to kind of build successfully around that.
Okay, so do you you mentioned people kind of learning about themselves and maybe their skill set, what they're best at. Is that something that you've do you normally run to your strengths more than you train your weaknesses? That makes sense?
Yeah, so something I had to learn in business early on is that, in fitness, powerlifting, for instance, you find your weaknesses and then turn those into strengths, and that's what gets you better, right? So, and if you're a powerlifter, even CrossFit is it's building your weaknesses that make the difference. In business, you don't have to build your weaknesses, you have to fill your weaknesses. You have to fill the gaps, right? So if you're a very creative person who is a big thinker, but maybe you would consider yourself a procrastinator in terms of getting stuff done, it's not about you not being a procrastinator anymore. What it's about is you finding the right people who are going to take your vision, your ideas, and then turn that into something, right? So finding the right project manager, finding the right execution team, and luckily we live in a world now where you can just you don't have to personally hire someone full time. You can outsource to various different people, companies. So it's one of those things where you find your weaknesses and then you fill those gaps with employees or companies or software, right? And that's how you can grow in business fast. And what I find is if you try to do everything yourself and you try to say for instance you really don't like computer programming and building websites for instance, there's so many options out there for you to be able to build sites or someone else to be able to build for you. So, it's about finding those weaknesses. And like I said, as a human being, one of the things, to expand this outside of business as well into kind of, the other areas. Like same in relationships, your weaknesses, like knowing your weaknesses is what's empowering, right? Because if you in a relationship, you know where your weaknesses are, then you're able to figure out, okay, how do we work around that? So I bring my very best to a relationship, and you can hire experts, you can read books, you can there's so much available to you in every single area. And most people, what they do is they focus on one area. So like focus on health, or focus on wealth, or they focus on spirituality, like people who go to church, or dive into consciousness and things like that, like through the different avenues, faith and spirituality. And then we have relationships, and a lot of people will go to the gym, they'll have a nutritionist, and they'll work on their fitness, but then they can't figure out why their relationship with their partner isn't working. But yet they won't go to a boot camp for relationships, or they'll read a book on relationships. So it's about having that balance across the different pillars, so to speak, and finding your weaknesses, and then figuring out how do I fix these, or how do I fix them? How do these get fixed? And like I said, in business, you're able to hire people. In relationships, you can bring people in to help you. You can put things in place to help you. So it's just knowing your weaknesses is way more powerful than knowing your strengths. Once you know what you're good at, then you can really drive that up. And in sports, you kind of see that in, you have MMA, but then you still have people who go and do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they're like, they're a world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but they're not a great MMA fighter. But they'll help MMA fighters get better for that. So you just got to kind of start to understand yourself. The more you understand yourself, understand what it is you do, what makes you tick, your habits, good and bad, then you can really start to design the life that you want. And I think that that's really what's empowering, and that's true freedom, right? It's freedom when you know you're actually in control of everything, and you're responsible for building, creating, and living this life that you wish.
Yeah, and I love that. One thing you mentioned there is habits, and so I want to dissect you just a little bit more. Is there a morning routine, a daily ritual, or some sort of habit, maybe all three, but daily that you do that you could maybe attribute to some of your success?
Yeah, so this ebb and flows, and sometimes it's very strict, and then sometimes it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But obviously for me, exercise is a part of my daily routine, and I usually find like the mornings are always the best time, because if you have a busy day, and it's easy to skip the workout. But one of the things that really has made a difference for me is really managing my time through time blocking, and actually sticking to that morning routine where it's built in. And so working out is obviously a big thing in the morning, and meditation is big for me. I like to meditate for about 20 to 30 minutes every day. And really, like if you're not familiar with meditation, listening to this, and it's really just sitting, kind of sitting with your thoughts. And so there's lots of different meditation stuff out there you can get started with. Just on YouTube, you can just search for guided meditation. But really what it is just sitting in silence with your thoughts, and you can play music or whatever. But meditation has made a huge difference to me. I stretch right now. I want to get into yoga, but I go through a stretching routine as well. And then I learn, I have a learning block where I'm, listening to a TED talk or an audio book or something like that. And that's usually while I'm working out or something like that. So I'm kind of, condensing, multitasking, so to speak, once when I'm doing my cardio, etc. And then I'll plan the day. So, what 3 things need to get done today. And who's waiting on me for stuff, and kind of plan out how the day is going to look, and then I go into work. The only other thing I do in the morning I forgot to mention is I journal. I have it's called the 5-minute journal. I used to try to journal, and it never would stick to it, and then I got this 5-minute journal, and it basically asks you a series of questions.
Yeah, I have the same one. Yeah.
And so I use that, and that allows me to, write down what I'm grateful for, write down what's going to make today good, go through some self-talk, affirmation stuff. And so I use that. And so really the combination of journaling, meditation, stretching, working out, and then learning something, being inspired for the day. And then I go into my work blocks. And I work from 60 to 90 minute blocks before taking breaks throughout the day. And, essentially that's how the day goes. And when I eat scheduled, when I play is scheduled. So all of this stuff is marked out. And what I find is that most people want freedom, right? That's their whole thought process, is they want freedom. But I really find that freedom comes from structure. The more organized, the more structure I have, the more free I am. Because when I'm not, by doing that, when I'm not working, I can truly not work, right?
Right.
And I think that that's the big thing when you just running and gunning. You're out for dinner, your partner excuses themselves to go to the restroom. Next thing you know, you're on your phone checking the emails because you didn't check emails because you didn't block it into your schedule. The day got crazy, so now you're checking emails. Your partner comes back, sits down, and for a moment you're disconnected because you're still wrapping up whatever you were doing, and you're not present. And so I find that when everything is planned out, and it doesn't. Don't get me wrong, like this is like my ideal day, and oftentimes, there's things that creep up, but more often than not, I try to have that structure, and that gives me that freedom. And so, the more rigid I've become with that, and over the years, it takes time. You can't just automatically go to that, but it just takes that commitment. And over the years, it's more and more, and it's giving me more and more freedom. And so the morning ritual, regardless of what you want to do, I would say get your morning ritual down first and then start figuring out the rest of the day from there. And of course, if you work for someone else, you're very limited in terms of how you can plan your day. But you can at least control your mornings and your evenings.
And I really love that whole routine. I kind of have a similar one to you that, I've instituted over the last year, and same as you, in my perfect day, it looks similar, but something you mentioned were affirmations, and I know that's in the 5-minute journal, but I just have a little bit of curiosity if affirmations have been a part of your life, through powerlifting and everything else you've achieved, because I recently heard Scott Adams did a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and Scott Adams, the author of Dilbert, and a very successful guy, talked about his use of affirmations and how he would write, I'm going to be a successful cartoonist 15 times a day until it actually happened. Have you used affirmations throughout your career, or is this something rather new?
Yeah, I've used them from the beginning. Actually, when I got really into powerlifting, and maybe I did it younger as well. I just don't remember. But when I got into powerlifting, it was strange. There was a really good lifter called Mike Miller, and he posted something about he was working with this guy, and he posted something. It was basically like a script that basically was just I'm made of steel, my bones are steel rods, my muscles are liquid iron, and just this whole thing on just being this really strong invincible human strength machine. And I remember reading that and being that's really cool. And so I started at my meets talking to myself, and getting myself psyched up, and I would do well. And so I just continued that, and really self-talk and self-love has been a huge part from the beginning. And just, anytime I catch myself in the negative self-talk, just reframing it and turning it around has been huge. And so I think, one of the things people can do if they're unaware of their self-talk is really just go through the day and just see how many times you are negative. And, you can have a elastic band around your wrist, and just change wrists every time you think negative, or every time you think a negative thought. And you'll be surprised at how often that happens. And then once you have that awareness around it, you can start changing that. So every time you think to yourself, when you look in the mirror and you say, oh man, I don't like what I see, instead of doing that, you can stand there and say, look at yourself, stare into your own eyes, and just say, you're a beautiful human being. You're fit, you're healthy, and you focus on what it is you want to be. Because remember, like, the truth is, like, underneath whatever layers you have, underneath all that, like, there's brilliance and greatness in all of us. And so that if you let that person come out and you let that person be in charge, eventually you'll end up being that person. Right. And so it's allowing yourself to let them be in control versus the negative being in control. And if you can make that switch, I think that's, when you hear a lot of successful people, self-talk is huge. And the truth is, everyone has doubts, everyone has fears, everyone has this dark side. I wrote something from my Facebook wall the other day, and it was, without the beast, there'll be no beauty. And essentially, like, we all have demons, we all have, a beast inside of us, and it's learning how to control that and tame that dark side. That there has to be dark in order for there to be light, but it's about learning how to control that, and you can tame that. And once you can do that, that's when you really are in control, and that's where you see those affirmations start to come true. It's not because you said it that it became true. It's because it was already true. You just allowed it to come out. And so, writing, I'm going to be a great cartoonist, that great cartoonist already lies within, and, you're just giving yourself permission for that person to come out. That beautiful person underneath, 100 extra pounds of body weight, that person's there. You just have to allow them to come out. And so I think that's the power of self-talk, and it's definitely something I've used throughout my career.
That's really awesome, AJ, and I could probably seriously sit here and pick your brain all day, but I want to be courteous of your time. So we're going to hop to the quick fire questions of the show, and then we'll hop to the last question, the most important question. But are you ready for the quick fire questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. What's the hardest workout you've ever done?
Anything CrossFit.
All right. In your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
Facing your fears. Yeah, if you're scared of heights, go jump out of a plane. If you're scared of snakes, go lay in a snake pit. Confronting your fears, I think, is the biggest way to improve your mental toughness.
That's awesome. All right, if you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I have to say a kettlebell. I don't know. I just love the kettlebells and the way the ease of the motion, and there's just so many things you can do with them. So yeah, I would say the kettlebell.
Very versatile piece of equipment right there. All right, man, we are now down to the last question, and this is 100% open-ended. The answer can be as long or as short as you would like, but kind of accumulating the data from some of the world's greatest here and seeing what they have to say. So the best advice you have for becoming a better human, like I said, 100% open-ended.
I honestly think the best advice I could give is to surround yourself with people who shatter your own beliefs. I've had the fortune of meeting some of the world's most successful people in sports and business and things like that. And the truth is like, perception is reality. And so if I had never seen anyone, I got to train with a world record holder. And if I'd never seen a guy squatting the weights he was, I might, even though I've heard of it, I might not think it's possible. The type of money that people earn, I've hung out with billionaires and millionaires, and unless I'd seen the lifestyle and that they were just normal people, I might not think it would be possible. And I think that the key is to start to realize that, like, it's possible for you as much as it is for anyone else. And to do that, you have to get around those people. And a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to surround yourself with great and amazing people. So, look at the people around you now, and do they inspire you? Do they motivate you? Do they raise you up? Do they give you, targets to shoot for? Or, is everyone, the same or below you? Or, what's that situation like? And if you start surrounding yourself with people who do inspire you, then your life is going to change, and you're going to evolve, and you're going to grow. But until you put yourself in those situations and kind of be willing to put yourself in those situations and to open up and explore a whole new world, it's difficult. I could sit here and tell you that you can achieve anything and anything is possible. But there's a difference between listening to an audio and then hanging out with a person that's done things that just blow your mind and realizing, wait a minute, we're not that different, and I can do that too. And I think that that's the biggest thing. So, if you're an athlete, go train with better athletes. If you're a business person, go hang out with more successful business people. If you want a better relationship, hang out with people who have successful relationships. And if you want to find a stronger faith, regardless of what religion or belief system you have, go find the people that have what it is you want, and hang out with them. And that will be the biggest lessons you can learn. And I call it shortcutting to success. A lot of people say you got to have 10,000 hours to become an expert. Well, you go find the person that's got 100,000 hours and just observe, and that'll be a bigger lesson than trying to figure it out on your own and going at it all alone. So that would be probably my best advice for becoming a better human.
I love that, man. Shortcutting the 10,000 hour rule. That's awesome. Well, AJ, I really appreciate that answer. And before we close it out, what's the best place for people to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, you can check out my website, ajroberts.com. If you want to check out the podcast, barbellbusiness.com. It's targeted mainly for people in the fitness niche, but if you're a business owner, you'll probably learn a lot from it. We talk about a lot of business things. We bring people in from outside of the fitness world and kind of decompose what they're doing and share, what their success is. So if you're into podcasts, check out Barbell Business.
Yeah, man. I just actually listened to this week with Lewis Howes. That was a great episode, man. So I recommend to all the listeners out there, go check out his website, ajroberts.com, and then also Barbell Business, great podcast. All right, AJ, thanks for being on the show, man. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.